The truth about Victoria Parker's gambling addiction unraveled over roast turkey and cranberry sauce. Though I've been collecting evidence for months. As my mother-in-law sat at the head of her perfectly decorated Thanksgiving table, bragging about her latest investment ventures, I could feel the weight of the casino statements in my bag, waiting like a loaded gun. I'm an insurance fraud investigator, something Victoria always dismissed as such a quaint little job compared to her role as a prominent real estate agent. But those investigative skills she loved to belittle, they're what helped me uncover her $300,000 secret. The mashed potatoes are a bit lumpy, Victoria announced, eyeing my contribution to dinner with barely concealed disdain. I always use a ricer, creates a much more refined texture. My husband Jason squeezed my hand under the table. After 5 years of marriage, we were used to his mother's subtle jabs. What she wasn't used to was someone fighting back. Speaking of refined, Jason said, reaching for the gravy. I tried to access Dad's trust fund yesterday to make that down payment on the house we talked about. The account was empty. The silver serving spoon in Victoria's hand clattered against the china. For a split second, her carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing raw panic underneath. Empty? She echoed quickly, recovering as she reached for her wine glass. That's impossible. There must be some mistake with the bank. That's what I thought too. I joined in, keeping my voice casual as I reached for my bag. So I did some digging. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She'd never approved of me, the middle-class insurance investigator who'd stolen her precious son from the socialite she'd handpicked for him. Now, watching me pull out a folder, she seemed to realize just how dangerous my quaint little job could be. Sarah, dear, her voice dripped with false sweetness, surely Thanksgiving dinner isn't the time for paperwork. Oh, but it is, I smiled, laying out the first document. Especially when that paperwork shows multiple transfers from the trust fund to an account in your name over the past year. Jason's sister, Amanda, leaned forward, her own dinner forgotten. Mom, what's she talking about? It's nothing. Victoria waved her hand dismissively, but I noticed the slight tremor in her fingers. Just some routine account management. As executor of your father's estate. You stopped being the executor when Jason turned 30, I interrupted. The trust was supposed to transfer fully to him 3 months ago. Instead, you've been emptying it systematically for the past year. The color drained from Victoria's perfectly made-up face. That's absurd. I would never. Never what? I pulled out my phone. Never take weekly trips to Vegas under the guise of showing luxury properties. Never spend 12 hours straight at the high-stakes poker tables. Never lose $50,000 in a single night. Jason's fork dropped to his plate with a clatter. Mom. I turned my phone screen around, showing the player's card history I'd obtained through a contact at the Bellagio. Your mother has lost over $300,000 at various casinos in the past year, exactly the amount missing from your trust fund. Victoria's husband, George, who'd been quietly eating his turkey, finally looked up. Vicky, tell me this isn't true. But Victoria was already shifting into defense mode. This is ridiculous. I am a successful businesswoman. I don't need to steal. Your real estate license was suspended 6 months ago. I cut in, pulling out another document. Something about misappropriating client funds. Those luxury property showings in Vegas were just a cover for your gambling trips. Amanda gasped. Your license was suspended, but you just sold to Henderson's their house last month. No, I corrected, she didn't. The sale was handled by her partner, but she kept up appearances to hide the suspension, just like she's been hiding her gambling addiction from everyone. Addiction. Victoria's voice rose shrilly. How dare you? I am in perfect control of my. Then explain these. I laid out a series of casino receipts. 5 separate occasions where you lost over $40,000 in a single night. Each loss followed by a transfer from Jason's trust fund the next day. The elegant Thanksgiving dinner had ground to a halt. Amanda's teenage daughters whispered to each other while George stared at his wife of 35 years like he was seeing a stranger. Mom. Jason's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me this isn't true. Victoria's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass, missing it entirely and knocking it over. Red wine spread across her pristine white tablecloth. But for once she didn't seem to notice. You don't understand, she began, her voice trembling. The first time was an accident. I was in Vegas for a real showing and I wanted to feel that excitement again. When I lost, I borrowed from the trust fund, but I was going to pay it back. I had a system. A system that lost you $300,000 of your son's money. George's voice was ice cold. I can explain everything, Victoria insisted, but her perfect mask was crumbling by the second. The silence that followed Victoria's attempted explanation was broken only by the gentle ping of my phone as more casino records arrived. I'd been building this case for months, ever since I noticed the suspicious transfers while helping Jason plan for our house down payment. I have more, I said quietly, swiping through my phone. Would you like to see the security footage from the Bellagio showing you pawning your anniversary diamonds to cover a gambling debt? Or maybe the credit card statements showing cash advances at the MGM Grand? George's face went ashen. The diamonds I gave you for our 30th anniversary, you said you lost them at the spa. I was going to buy them back. Victoria's voice had taken on a desperate edge. I just needed one more good hand. The cards were running hot, and my system. Stop saying system. Amanda slammed her hand on the table, making the crystal glasses jump. You stole from your own son. From our father's legacy. Victoria's carefully maintained composure cracked further. You don't understand. The rush when you're winning, it makes you feel alive. After your father died, I felt so empty. The cards filled that void. And emptied Jason's trust fund, I added, pulling up another document. But it gets worse. Would you like to tell everyone about Amanda's children's college accounts, or should I? Amanda's head snapped up. What about my daughter's accounts? Victoria's face went from pale to gray. Now, Sarah, there's no need to. The college funds your father set up for your granddaughters. I turned to Amanda. They're gone too. All $125,000 of them. The twins, Emily and Sophie, stopped their teenage whispering and stared at their grandmother in horror. They were juniors in high school, already planning their college applications. Grandma? Emily's voice trembled. Our college money is gone. Not gone, Victoria said quickly, her hands fluttering like trapped birds. Just temporarily relocated. I was on a winning streak last month. If I just had a few more hands. You use our college funds to gamble. Sophie's voice cracked. We've been touring campuses, making plans. I can fix this, Victoria insisted, but her voice had taken on a hysterical edge. I just need a little more time. There's a high-stakes game next week. No more games, George cut in, his voice hard. No more lies. No more systems. This ends now. I pulled out my final piece of evidence, the one that would shatter any remaining doubt. Your mother took out a third mortgage on this house last month. I told Jason and Amanda. Using forged signatures, the bank is already investigating the fraud. George's fork clattered to his plate. You mortgaged our house? Without telling me. The bank's fraud department is very interested in speaking with you, Victoria, I continued. Especially about the forged signatures. And the casinos? They don't take kindly to markers being covered with stolen funds. Victoria's perfect world was crumbling around her like the untouched turkey on her plate. Her designer dress suddenly seemed too tight as she struggled to breathe. I need help, she whispered, and for the first time that evening she sounded sincere. Yes, George said firmly. You do. Professional help, and a good lawyer. But first, I added, you need to tell everyone exactly how much you've taken. No more lies, no more hiding. Victoria's hands shook as she reached for her water glass, avoiding the spilled wine that was still spreading across her precious tablecloth. I don't know the exact amount, she admitted. It all started to blur together after a while. The wins, the losses. $642,000, I supplied. That's the total from all accounts combined, including the new mortgage and credit card cash advances. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Over $500,000, Amanda whispered. Gone to gambling. Victoria's carefully constructed facade finally shattered completely. Tears streaked her perfect makeup as she looked around the table at the family she betrayed. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. The first win was so exciting. Then the losses came, and I just kept thinking one more hand would fix everything. One more gain would make it all right. The aftermath of Thanksgiving's revelations hit our family like an earthquake, with aftershocks that continued for months. Victoria checked into a gambling addiction treatment center the following week, but not before the full extent of her addiction came to light. There's more, I told Jason one evening as we sorted through the mountain of financial documents. She has $180,000 in credit card debt spread across 15 different cards, all maxed out at various casinos. The treatment center was expensive, $45,000 for a 90-day program. But George insisted on paying for it himself, selling his prized classic car collection to cover the cost. The man who had been blindly devoted to his wife for 35 years now walked around like a ghost, second-guessing every memory. She lost her wedding ring in a poker game last month, he confided one day, his voice hollow. Told me it was being cleaned. I found the pawn ticket in her purse. Amanda took charge of her daughter's college situation, working with financial advisors to secure loans and scholarships. The twins, still reeling from their grandmother's betrayal, threw themselves into their studies with renewed determination. We're not letting Grandma's addiction steal our future, Emily declared during a family meeting. We'll work through college if we have to. The legal consequences were severe. The bank's fraud investigation led to criminal charges for the forged documents. Victoria's real estate license was permanently revoked. The casinos filed their own suits for unpaid markers and fraudulent checks. 3 months after Thanksgiving, we gathered again, this time at our house. Victoria was there, fresh from rehab, wearing department store clothes instead of her usual designer labels. The change wasn't just external. Her eyes had lost their manic gleam, replaced by a haunted awareness. My counselor says I need to make amends, she said quietly as we cleared the dishes. But how do you make amends for stealing your children's future? You start by telling the truth, I replied. All of it. The truth, as it turned out, was even darker than we'd known. Victoria had been gambling for years, even before Jason's father died. The inheritance money had just given her more ammunition for her addiction. I used to sneak off to underground poker games while you kids were in school, she confessed during a family therapy session. Your father covered for me so many times, until he couldn't anymore. The recovery process was slow and painful. Victoria sold everything of value she owned, her designer wardrobe, her jewelry, her luxury car. Every penny went toward repaying what she'd stolen, though we all knew it would take years to make up for the losses. George filed for separation but not divorce, choosing to support Victoria's recovery while protecting himself financially. He moved into a small apartment, his trust as broken as the family's finances. I enabled her, he'd admitted during a quiet dinner at our house. All those business trips, the unexplained expenses, I chose not to see it because seeing it meant facing it. 6 months after Thanksgiving, we had another family dinner. Victoria arrived in a used Toyota, wearing clothes from Target, her previously perfect manicure done at home. She brought a notebook filled with calculations, her ongoing tally of debts and repayments. I'm working at a call center now, she told us, her voice lacking its former condescension. It's not much, but every dollar goes toward making this right. Jason and Amanda had established strict boundaries. Victoria could only see her granddaughters under supervision. She had no access to any family financial information. Trust, like the money she'd lost, would have to be earned back penny by penny. The hardest part, she said during dessert, is walking past casinos now. My hands shake, and I can hear the slot machines calling. My sponsor says those urges might never go away completely. But you're fighting them, Jason said, offering the first words of encouragement he'd given his mother in months. As everyone was leaving, Victoria lingered in our doorway. Sarah, she said, turning to me, I owe you an apology. All those years I looked down on your job. If it weren't for your investigation skills, I might have gambled away everything. I watched her walk to her Toyota, such a far cry from her former Mercedes, and felt Jason's arm slip around my waist. Think she'll stay clean? He asked. Day by day, I replied. That's all any of us can do. Later that night, looking at old family photos, I found one from our wedding. Victoria standing proudly in her expensive mother-of-the-groom dress, not knowing that 5 years later, she'd lose everything to an addiction she couldn't control. You know what's ironic? Jason said, holding me close. All those years she spent trying to maintain the perfect image, and in the end, it was the truth that set her free. The next morning, Victoria would attend another DA meeting, earn another sobriety chip, and continue the long journey of making amends. Our family was forever changed, but maybe, just maybe, we were changing for the better. Sometimes the biggest wins come disguised as losses, and the most valuable things in life can't be wagered at a poker table.